Oh, wee, Expedition 33. So close to a year ago, when Expedition 33 was first revealed at one of the numerous forgettable game awards, there was one game that stood out from the rest and kinda caught my eye as a JRPG fan due to the more unique looking turn-based combat, which had elements of real-time combat mixed in. But like all new releases, especially since Cyberpunk 77 tossed my soul into a K-hole on release, I made sure to keep my expectations tempered. And the way I try to approach most new games now is by practically expecting nothing. That way, if the game does wind up being dog shit, I lose nothing, and if the game does wind up being good, then it's a welcome surprise. And that's the same approach I try to take with movies, TV shows, or any...
The funny thing is, despite me pretty much having the same approach, I still end up being disappointed because I just have basic standards that are not met by a lot of games.
Other source of media I consume at this point, considering that every franchise I grew up with and pretty much even remotely gave a fuck about has been raped, murdered, resurrected, only to then be raped and murdered again. And since Expedition was also something new, I had zero personal attachment to it and went in hoping for nothing other than a decent JRPG. So to say that my expectations were low would be an understatement. But even with all that being said, I found Expedition 33 to actually be a pretty damn good game. But that certainly doesn't mean that I'm about to spend this entire video glazing it, like I have seen numerous people do already. Because while I did find it to be a pretty damn good game, it's certainly not without any flaws. And considering that we live in a time now where everything either has to be liquid dog shit that's an utter disgrace to the human race, or an absolute masterpiece blessed by the gods itself with zero flaws and perfect in every way. So like all my reviews, I'm gonna approach this from a more balanced standpoint and give you guys both the pros and the cons. And while I did like it, this is definitely gonna be a very divisive game, and less because of its gameplay and more because of its story, because it's one of those stories that you're either gonna really like and relate to, or you're gonna fucking hate, and it might just put you off from the game entirely, as I've already seen numerous people say. And due to the very nature of this game's story, this is gonna have to be a pretty spoiler heavy video. I'll make sure to give fair warning and have a spoiler section on its own, but considering how drastic shit starts to happen at about 6 hours into the game, there's only so much I'm gonna be able to say in the story section without giving you spoilers, so just a heads up for that. And without wasting any more time, let's get into the gameplay. Brought to you by the same country that created Cuties. Sorry, France, you don't get to live that one down.
People love France!
They're a big fan of that kind of shit. Oh shit, did you fuck up your chapters? Or did you forget to put them in? Oh, soundtrack. I'm assuming this is the story section, right?
Gustav he's an inventor. He knows a lot about chroma, which is basically the magic of this universe. His
we can skip
16-year-old killed in the Gomage. You eventually get down to the dock where they're going to Force Ones.
What kind of animal are you?
I had to smoke a worm chirp so much.
And while doing this, you can also talk to a few other people to learn a bit more about the world and what's currently going on. So the Gomage happens, the paintress snaps, Gustav shits and cries, the bitch is dead, then you head to a little party to meet your fellow expeditioners, where you can then proceed to get a gay-ass haircut and a key which you won't use until about 20 hours from now. But in actuality, there's only 2 people from this party you actually need to give a fuck about, and I'll explain why in just a second. But those 2 people are the Asian chick Loon, that I have something else to say about in a minute, and Ciel, who is going to be our tomboy girlfriend for this expedition.
Take your clothes off.
So before I describe Loon's character at all, I just want to point out the fact that Loon looks very mysteriously like one of the writers for this game, and I'm almost certain that she is a self-insert. And I'm sorry, but I don't give a fuck. No matter what the context is, self-inserts will always be so fucking cringe. And while I will say that Loon is quite pretty, self-inserts are still something that I will never like, and it'll always just scream of narcissism and self-importance to me. But with that being said, there weren't really any party members in this game that I disliked, and I did wind up liking Loon, but I guess the best way to describe Loon would be that she's the super serious, smart Asian girl with extremely strict parents that never gave her any freedom growing up. But Loon is definitely a headstrong character who's extremely focused on the mission and tries to always put the objective before her own emotions, because she was raised by 2 scientist parents that basically forced her to be their science experiment from the day she was born and never gave her any real freedom to essentially raise her to be an expeditioner and take their place if they died during their expedition. But throughout the game, she learns to loosen up a bit as she becomes greater friends with you guys and kind of develop her own purpose outside of what her parents originally envisioned for her. And the best way I could probably describe the tomboy girlfriend Ciel is that she's more of a lighthearted character that seems to not try to take anything too seriously or affect her too deeply, at least not at a first glance. And you find out later that this is mostly due to her traumatic past. But Ciel was definitely a cool character, and it was definitely hard not to feel bad for her after learning more about her and why she approaches life the way that she does. So after you meet all the characters, suck and fuck each other for the night, you hop on the boat and begin your expedition. And the absolute second you arrive to the island, you're approached by a mysterious old man just tossing.
We'll skip ahead a bit.
Those sweet tomboy all
Okay, hold on. We'll watch some of these edits.
Called Gestrels, who, I mean this quite literally, are all retarded and do nothing but fight and sell shit.
You are Josh.
All right.
You will also find these guys scattered throughout the world and will be the primary way of you buying stuff and using your chroma, which is essentially your currency. They can sell different outfits, different hairstyles, which is something I want to bring up real quick. There is quite a lot of character customization in regards to outfits. By the end of the game, almost every character has like 10 different outfits and plenty of different hairstyles, and I'm not gonna lie and say I didn't have a good time customizing my character's appearances, and especially acquiring the swimsuits.
I told you. We're gonna hang out. Gonna watch a movie. Gonna take some pictures.
Which, speaking of the swimsuits, you'll find scattered throughout the world, and you basically have to do different mini games to do them. And I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but one of these involved me climbing, kind of like that game Only Up or whatever the fuck it's called.
Yeah,
and all I can say is thank God I wasn't streaming this part, because the amount of slurs that came out of my goddamn mouth would have gotten me wiped off this platform.
Yeah, I noticed even with just the first one on the beach how janky the climbing shit was with it. They really they wanted to put mini streamer game within the game.
Get the fuck out of here. Fucking big nose c***. And speaking of the Gestrels and them selling things, that also leads me to one of my favorite parts of the game. Because they like fighting, that means that you get to fight the merchants. So channel your inner rejected painter and unleash that anger.
My money, and I need it now! Help, please!
Please! A madman is trying to kill me over $5.
And while you're at the Goy village, that's where you'll also reunite with CL, whose voluptuous cheeks shall push us through our journey. You guys will then move on to a few different places, learn some more about previous expeditioners, until you eventually meet two more important characters. The first one being named SK, who is Boogie from an alternate timeline, where he decided to not fake having cancer, and instead dedicate his time to helping others and just being an overall joyous individual with funny one-liners and a pure soul.
I'm in tremendous pain! I'm in tremendous pain! Help me! Help me! Help me!
But SK is a pretty funny character overall. He's basically your main form of transportation around the world and can do things from just get you around quicker to swimming in the water till eventually in the in-game flying. So he's definitely very useful to the party. And I'm convinced that anyone who doesn't like SK probably doesn't have a soul, because this man is too pure-hearted to hate. And the other character being Francois, who's SK's friend and a big blue turtle. And all you need to know about him is that he has the strongest ice attack. And just when you guys all seem to be reunited, getting your footing, making good progress, and everything seems to be going a little too well, that's when, all of a sudden, the old man from the opening approaches you from the shadows and is about to shit on your day. And this is pretty much where I have to end the non-spoiler section, because what happens next is a very major spoiler and pretty much changes the course of the story from this point onward. And this isn't even the biggest twist to come. So I'm gonna say it one more time. This is the spoiler section. If you continue watching
you know, if I guess if you're still playing the game, but I mean it's been well over a month at this point, so I assume everyone either decided to quit or, you know, doesn't care.
This point onwards, it is on you. So with that, let's get into the spoilers. So, the reason I had to quickly jump into the spoilers section is because Gustav, the main character, gets fucking Ned Stark Season 1 about 6 hours into the game if you were to just rush through it and avoid most of the optional content.
All right.
And
Yeah,
this is step one of where this game is going to be quite divisive. Because I've already seen tons of people say they basically quit the game when Gustav died. And I'll be one of the first to say that I am not entirely against a game making a decision like this, as I can at least respect that it's pretty ballsy. But I will agree with people and say that I definitely think it could have been done better. But you remember how back when I was first describing Gustav, how I really didn't have that much to say about him? That's because I really just don't feel like Gustav fully received enough time as a character before killing him off. If the developers really wanted to go for that whole Aerith impact, then you gotta remember that she died about 3/4 of the way through the game. So by the time she died, you were really attached to her, whereas by the time Gustav died, I was honestly confused and didn't even believe he was actually dead for about a good hour, because I was like, really? I mean, that's it? I feel like there was still so much more to do with this guy. I will say that he had one nice character arc, and that's that there are certain moments in the story that kind of show you that Gustav is a little bit cowardly, or at the very least he seems to only care about his and Mael's survival more than the actual objective. There's even a moment back at camp where Loon asks him if he truly does care about the mission, and the best answer he can give is, "I hope so."
Do you still believe that? Do you still believe that?
If you don't get that bullshit out of my face, bitch.
So by Gustav choosing to stay and fight the threat so that his party can escape and continue the mission basically answers that question itself, and you could say that that's a nice little character arc, but I definitely don't think it was enough. That's another thing, I do like that Gustav at least went out a hero, fighting what's essentially the final boss by himself in hopes that his party can escape. And another reason his death didn't bother me as much is because he's immediately replaced by another white guy that oddly also kind of looks like him, named Verso. And Verso also basically takes his spot as the second protagonist along with Mael, and Verso winds up being a much cooler character overall, who's much more important to the plot. So my interest quickly moved on to Verso. So again, I'm not necessarily against you killing the main character, but it certainly could have been done better, and I think Gustav just simply needed more development time so that his death would hit harder and feel more impactful to the story, because really all that it serves in the end is to further push Mael, especially when another plot twist is unveiled later, which makes Gustav feel even more irrelevant. And since this video is already going to be pretty fucking long, and I still got quite a bit more to say, instead of continuing a quick rundown of the plot, I'm pretty much just going to go straight from important plot point to important plot point. So after Verso joins the party, he remains pretty mysterious overall. He uses the same weapon as Gustav, the same skill tree along with some new ones. The only downside is that none of Gustav's outfits carry over, so for quite a large portion of the game, Verso will remain dripless until around Act 3. And he has his own gimmick that's definitely DMC inspired, but basically the better you play and the longer you go without taking any damage, your rank will go up just like your style meter at Devil May Cry. And as his rank goes up, different attacks will get different bonuses, and in return you'll do more damage overall. So it's a cool little gimmick, and I can always appreciate a shout out to Devil May Cry.
I should have been the one to fill your dark
ass cock.
But as you get farther through the game and more of Verso's character is unraveled, you'll find out that there is quite a lot to unpack about him. But you find out that Verso is basically immortal and was originally a part of Expedition Zero, which was over 67 years ago, and since then he's been on this island trying to help other expeditioners defeat the Paintress, with basically zero fucking luck. And you eventually find out that the old man that's been terrorizing your party this entire time is named Renard. And forgive me if I mispronounced that, I don't speak croissant. And that he's actually
Renoir.
Verso's father.
You haven't told her the truth. Have you, son?
And the Paintress is his mother. And while I'm on this topic, I might as well mention that there is kind of like a relationship meter in this game with each of the party members. And while you can ultimately sleep with either Loon or CL, it all happens entirely off screen and is not a big part of the game. But while you're at camp, you can talk to each of the party members to learn more about them. And as you do this, this will raise their relationship meter. And this is also how you unlock more gradient attacks for each of the characters. So if you do play the game, definitely make sure you do these when you get the chance. And the reason I bring this up while talking about Verso is because during one of the conversations with Mael, she eventually asked Verso, since he's the one that saved them from Renard, if he purposefully let Gustav die. And you're given the option to say yes or no, with yes being the truth and no being a lie.
Did you let Renoir kill Gustav? Could you have saved him?
Me? Just hanging around.
And I'll go even more in depth into this when talking about the ending, but he was definitely my favorite character, and I'm even considering putting him on the banner, because by the end of the game, I was definitely rooting for him. But eventually, after going to a few different places, your party recruits your final party member named Monica.
Man, it's been a while since I've updated my banner now that I think about it. Were there even any banner-worthy characters this year? Have I added to the banner this year? Fucking hell, we're almost in June. This has been a forgettable fucking year. Do I need to add King Arthur? Or Galahad? I don't know. Hey, maybe. Add Freerin? Hell no. Wait, Freerin. Wait, do you want Freerin on the thought side, on the fucking the roasties? The roasties? Yeah, Freerin Furin's not really a roasty though. She's probably like a 1,000-year-old virgin. She can't be a roasty. Her pussy's untouched. Elf pussy. Add Ryu from Ninja Gaiden. I don't know. He's not really a chud though. I wouldn't mind putting. I was thinking about putting King Arthur, but then at the end, he kind of like pussied out. He got depressed. Galahad is the fucking Inquisitor Chad burning these fucks to the ground. It's too bad he was only in the game for 5 minutes. If he was in more than 5 minutes, he'd be a good candidate for the banner, but he was only in for 5 minutes. Yeah, there might, dude, I don't know, man. There really haven't been any good stream characters this year. I'm kind of disappointed by that. I mean, I guess we still have the second half, but yeah. No, we're not fucking adding Kirsha to the banner. Why the fuck did we... Shut your fucking mouth.
Who's actually Verso's longtime friend since he's been on the island for so long, and is also one of the Gestrels. Unlike all the other ones that are pretty much retarded, he's actually pretty smart, and was overall a pretty cool character, which I wasn't expecting, considering what he looked like.
Ladies, could I?
Definitely a Gestrel.
Do you honestly think you're fucking funny fucking with my friend? Seriously.
But he helps provide a lot more information on what the Gestrels are like, what the island is like, and provide some more context for Verso's character, since he's basically the only friend he's had in his 67 years of being here. And I also found his gimmick in combat to be pretty cool, since he basically works like a blue mage from Final Fantasy, where over time he'll learn different attacks from different enemies that you face, and if you end up collecting all of them, there's a shit ton. And I just found it pretty cool using the enemy's own attacks against them. Although I will say that his damage definitely seemed to fall off pretty hard in the end game compared to basically all the other characters. So after going through a few more areas and a lot of different side content, you eventually make your way to the Paintress, have a big epic fight with some cool music, kill the dirty bitch, and then this is where the second big twist comes in. And this is where I personally think it's going to be the most divisive, and it's probably going to put the most people off. And this is why I say earlier that you're either going to really like it or you're going to fucking hate it, and it's probably going to ruin the game for you. But I will try to explain all of this in the least autistic way possible, and that's going to be kind of difficult, because while the game gives you some subcontext throughout, I'm about to lay all this on you at once to the best of my ability. No script, just spitting at you. So here we go. So after you kill the Paintress, you find out that the old man you've been fighting the whole game, Renard, isn't actually the real Renard, but rather a painted version of Renard made by the Paintress, and that the real Renard was actually trapped inside of the Paintress's monolith this entire time until we killed her, ultimately freeing him. And the real Renard was actually the curator, this weird ghost-looking dude that's been actually helping us out this whole game and leveling up our weapons and lumens. And once he's freed, he pretty much instantly just Thanos snapped the rest of the population. Your entire party all instantly dies, and so does everybody else left at Lumiere. And you're basically just left there going, what the fuck just happened? And then it's all basically revealed that this is pretty much a Matrix situation. And
yeah, I want to just point this out. I fucking called this in the first hour of the game. I said, this is like the painted world of Ariamis and Dark Souls. You can go back in the stream. I called it from the fucking beginning. I just want to say that. I literally said it in the stream. All right, just sorry. I had to throw that out there.
Ending of the game even reinforces this by basically giving you a red pill, blue pill situation. But essentially, everything you've experienced in the game so far, Lumiere, your party members, the expedition, none of this has actually been real, and is actually all taking place inside of what's essentially a magic painting. And the only people in this game that actually do exist in the real world are Mael, Verso, and their family, including the paintress, their mother, Alina, Renoir, the old man, who's their father, and Clea, who is Mael's sister. And all you really need to know about Clea is she's basically the one that created the Neverons. And the entire shift of the story basically goes from a typical JRPG fight god situation to all of a sudden a more tight-knitted family drama type of situation, where the main goal of the story then becomes reuniting a broken family.
Get a center, Renoir. You have no center.
How about you suck my cock? Ha!
And while for the sake of simplicity, I'm just gonna keep calling her Mael, just know that Mael's name in the real world is actually Alicia. But basically what happened is, years ago, a group of people called the Writers, and this is one of my nitpicks about the story, we don't learn jack shit about the Writers. We don't know who they are, we don't know what their beef with the Painter family is, we don't know shit about them. We just know that they're called the Writers and that Clea, Mael's sister, is looking for them. That's all we find out about them. But basically, the writers were pissed at the Paintress family for some reason. They decided to start a fire at their house. And this fire then led to the death of Verso, and he died saving Mael, although she certainly didn't get us scot-free either, as Mael was severely burned in the incident, basically getting 3rd-degree burns over her entire body, along with losing both an eye and her voice. So let's just say that her life in the real world is quite shit. But for some reason when Verso died, the last piece of his soul became trapped in the last thing he created, which is now the painted world. And the whole reason this painted world is special is because it's basically being powered by Verso's soul. Once you remove Verso's soul, it just goes back to being a regular painting, just like any other. But because Aline's son had just died and her daughter was now brutally scarred, she fell into grief, and to escape this grief, she entered Verso's painted world to basically live in the Matrix, and while there, created a painted version of her family.
Man, what the fuck is you talking about?
The easiest way you could probably think of these would be like the Heartless in Kingdom Hearts, if you've played that, and the painted version of this family is the ones we see in game, which is Mael, Verso, Clea, and Renoir. And basically, Alina just stays inside the painting to keep escaping her grief and has no real plans of going out anytime soon. And the downside to this is if you stay inside the painting long enough, you begin to be corrupted by chroma, you know, basically the magic, and it eventually kills you.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
So because of this, the real Renard, the father, goes inside the painting to try and free his wife and get her back so that their family can finally continue the healing process. Although the downside to this is that she's too powerful for him to just force out of the painting on his own, since apparently she's the better painter, and this is something I'm going to talk a little bit about later. So the most Renard can do is basically slowly erase stuff, and this is what leads to the gommage, and you basically find out that the paintress isn't actually the one doing the gommage. She's merely painting the number on the monolith as a warning to the people so that they can prepare to the best of their abilities for it, since she's not powerful enough to completely stop Renard, and the longer he's here, the stronger he gets. So Renard is actually the one doing the gommage, but just remember, he's not evil either. He's just trying to bring his wife back to reality.
Yeah, I mean, I know where this is going ultimately is like the debate, since I've been in some of these V threads, but it's just like, you know, would you rather live in an eternal fantasy or you know, just wipe it all out to live in reality, right? That's just the ultimate moral dilemma of the game. I feel like it's not that interesting, I'll be honest. Like, I guess it's a commentary about escapism, which is ironic because it's a video game and an RPG at that, which are, you know, known for their escapism. But, yeah, I know I'm kind of talking ahead because we got quite a bit of video left, but I am aware of where this is going.
Stupid bitch.
So this goes on for pretty much several years in the real world, and clearly time works differently in the painted world, because in the painted world it's been like 67 years, but obviously that can't be the case for the real world since Mael is only 16 years old, and this all started because of the accident. So at some point Alicia, Mael, begins going into the painting to A, try and get her mom back, and B, to escape the horrible reality of her situation, which is being a burnt mute. And keep in mind, I'm going purely based off memory here, so I might get a couple things wrong, but at some point, Mael, for some reason, gets painted over by Renard or something like that, which causes her to lose her memories. And this is why Mael in the game doesn't know any of this, and basically is just living like a character inside the painting. But at the end of Act 2, when you defeat the Paintress and Renard wipes everything, Mael is then forced back to the real world and regains all her memories from beforehand, meaning that she now has the memories of her real world self and her painted self, along with now having the powers of the Paintress, being the Paintress's daughter and all that. You also learn that this was secretly Verso's plan all along, because Verso, along with his father, wants his mom to finally face reality, get out of the painting, and in the process, finally allow himself to die as well, so that his soul can be freed from the canvas, allowing him to finally pass on to the afterlife. But now since Mael has all her memories back and knows what her life is like in the real world and just how bad it is, she decides that now she wants to stay inside the goddamn painting, and now she wants to be the next fucking Paintress.
Back where you fucking started, Wagey.
And I can't even say I blame her, because like I said, her life in the real world is pretty shit, but goddamn bitch, we just did all this to get your fucking mom out. So now our new objective becomes stopping Renard, because Mael doesn't want him to destroy the painted world. You still with me? You still with me? I promise you it's not this bad when you play throughout the entire course of the game. This probably sounds like the most retarded Kingdom Hearts shit ever, with me trying to steamroll through this. So then Mael goes back inside the painting, paints the party back, including Verso, Ciel, and Lune. Why didn't she bring Gustav back? I don't know, something about not having enough chroma or some plot shit like that. Everyone gets all pissy ass at Verso because he didn't tell them his actual plan, even though that's retarded. Verso doesn't have to tell any of you literal paint blotches on a canvas shit. This poor man, after like 100 years of bullshit, just wants to die after being burned in a house fire. But they all quickly get over it. Verso stands his ground, even says that he doesn't regret saving his mom and that he'd do it again. And at this point, you're basically given the choice to either go straight to Renard and fight his old ass, or begin doing pretty much all the optional content that you couldn't before. And me personally, I would advise that you probably just go...
That's literally his guts. Guts / Artorias. Literally, is the guts. Literally, he's one arm down, giant sword. It's literally guts.
Straight to Renard, because it seems like Renard is about level 50. I would not do what I did, which is every piece of side content possible before you go fight Renard, because that'll probably lead to what happened to me, where the ending fight becomes pretty anticlimactic because you kill him in 1 to 2 hits.
No, Resteel, you fucking retard who hasn't read the manga. That's literally his pose in the Berserk armor. One arm limp down, sword over. You stupid motherfucker, you don't know anything about Berserk. Shut your stupid ass mouth. It's obviously a reference. I mean, oh, this is not him limping, but they have statues of him doing the fucking pose. Are you kidding? That's literally the most obvious Berserk reference.
He was reacting to a...
He's already...
Oh, I skipped too far.
Climatic because you kill him in 1 to 2 hits. To repeat, do not go and fight Renard at level 99, or you will forcefully take a shit down that man's throat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true of,
He was reacting to a...
He's already dead!
In my opinion, this is where
there's a decent amount of JRPGs, well, this isn't Japanese, but there's a decent amount of turn-based RPGs that, yeah, they let you do all the optional content before you beat the game, and yeah. I mean, yeah, like Final Fantasy VII is a good example. If you do all the shit before the end, yeah, It pretty much happens most of the time because they know most players are not going to do the super bosses the first time through before they end it.
The side content does get the best, although I would try to at least do the reputation quest before you do fight Renar, as these do fill in some important plot holes in the story, as well as allowing you to meet both the painted version of Clea, Mael's sister, and finish off the painted version of Mael, which in my opinion also does a pretty good example of highlighting just what a little power-hungry bitch Mael's becoming, as she pretty much just disintegrates the painted version of Verso's sister right in front of him to his protest without even giving him an opportunity to say goodbye. She even tries to pull this little bitchy fucking argument on him like, oh well, she was ready to go so it wasn't fair. And Verso's like, I was literally standing 2 feet away. I just wanted to say goodbye. I wanted to say 2 words before you did what you did. So I feel like that's kind of fucked up no matter how you look at it. He wasn't even against her doing it. He just wanted to say bye first. Since like he says himself, they have way more history together than the real version of Mael. But whatever.
No, what are you doing? What are you doing? No, no, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stop! No! Oh God! Fuck! Fuck! Fuck!
Then you go to the final boss. The whole thing's pretty cool, you know, it's all visually impressive. You bring your own little, like, resurrected army of the previous expeditioners. It's all very anime
that's the
shit,
Marvel
pretty
movie
cool.
shit.
Really good music, the fights...
Yeah. Now I know why people are saying, like, oh, it's like the end game when they all come through the portal. Actually, God of War Ragnarok literally did the end game through the portal thing. Yeah, you know, I get it. It's like the Marvel movie thing.
Visually impressive. After you quote-unquote defeat Renar, you basically find out that because this dude just owns the painting at this point, I mean, he's kind of just too powerful for you guys to beat, no matter how you slice it. And even if you do beat him, he can pretty much just keep coming back inside the painting, so there really is no winning here. Mael just starts begging him to let her spend some more time in the painting, since her life is so horrible in the real world, and I guess as a father, he just kind of caves and says that he'll give her a bit more time, but I feel like deep down he knows that she's never coming out this painting. I don't know, I'm not really sure why he just let her. I feel like he could have just forced her out and then destroyed the painting, but whatever. You can call it a plot convenience, or maybe I missed something, but Renar kind of just caves and decides to let her stay, ultimately just leaving the painting of his own volition, which is when you're then given the final choice of the game. Because while Renar is willing to leave, Verso sure as fuck isn't. Verso wants to die, and Verso wants to put all this to rest, so that both his family can heal, and so that his sister doesn't just stay inside the painting and basically just fucking kill herself, because that's exactly what will happen if she continues to stay here for too long. And this is also like what I was talking about earlier, where you have the red pill and the blue pill choice. Do you take Verso's red pill and destroy this illusion, forcing everybody in it to face the reality of their situations for both the party members and the family? The party members having to realize that everything they've experienced so far isn't actually true, and that once Verso does this, their reality will end. And the reality for the family is that they're broken and they need to begin healing, except that their son is dead and that their daughter's life has been horribly altered, and try to make the best of the situation. Or you take Mael's red pill and you continue to live in Fantasyland, allowing the painted world and everything you've experienced so far in this game to continue living on, but in the meantime basically enslaving Verso's soul, forcing him to continue live against his own will, as well as pretty much killing Mael, as that's exactly what will happen if she continues to stay in the painted world. So there's definitely no happy endings in this game, but I feel like one of them is still objectively better than the other, at least if you care about the real world family. But in the end, I wound up going with Verso's red pill ending, because I personally find it better to confront your situation head on, as opposed to essentially numbing yourself and deluding yourself into a fantasy land, all to just hide from the truth. But of course that doesn't mean it was an easy choice either, because that also meant saying goodbye to all the other party members in the world that I've grown to love over the course of the game, as well as sending a poor 16-year-old girl back into a life that, to be honest, I don't even know if I myself would want to deal with. But at the end of the day, it's time to wake up, brother.
20,000 leagues under the sea is a nice place to deposit somebody, brother.
And while I personally enjoyed this story due to finding the overall objective somewhat relatable, as well as the twist doing a pretty good job of maintaining my interest, that definitely doesn't mean that the game's writing was without without flaws, and that I have no complaints whatsoever, but I'll try to make it quick. But for starters, a lot of this game's jokes just did not land. Now, I will admit that the game had some pretty good comedy, and it definitely did get a few laughs out of me, but if there's one thing I want to see games just stop doing entirely, it's fucking meme references, because they are disgustingly fucking cringe, and due to a game's development usually being several years long, I can almost guarantee you that that fucking meme will be severely out of date by the time the game actually hits the market, such as this one right here, where we have an everything's fine meme.
Kill yourself with 100%, with 1,000%.
I mean, what the fuck? Are we back in 2018? Stop with the fucking meme references. And in terms of the game's writing, I feel like some other things could have been done better as well. With one of them being, considering that the final choice of this game comes down to basically having to choose between Lumiere and the real world, the game could have definitely done a better job of making the player care about the real world and the family. Because when you really boil it down, we pretty much spend 98% of the game inside the painted world, only getting glimpses of the actual family and their real lives here and there. I don't think the game does a good enough job of making you care about the family as a whole. Luckily, I wound up really liking Verso and Mael, and in return that made Renor's and the mother's struggles understandable, but I also wouldn't fault anybody else for not feeling this way, because the game certainly does not do a good enough job of having you connect with these characters, or even explaining why certain things in the plot actually happened to begin with. Like earlier when I mentioned Verso's soul going into the canvas, and I pretty much just said, for some reason? And that's because it just simply isn't explained. How the fuck does your soul get trapped inside of a painting? Apparently this family has like the power to create special paintings or some shit like that, but again, it's not really explained at all how Verso was killed in a house fire, and then in the very next second he's stuck in an episode of The Twilight Zone.
What the fuck is this?
But it's just the little things like that where the more you think about it, the more you realize that certain aspects of the game certainly could have been explained better. Or when Mael resurrects the entire party after you defeat the Paintress, she's conveniently able to revive Verso, Lune, and Ciel because she had just enough chroma, but she apparently didn't have enough chroma to revive Gustav. But then we go around the map and basically like half resurrect all the previous expeditioners to make our little ghost army. But again, that kind of just adds to my point with Gustav earlier, where he really does just get completely forgotten about in the story, basically. As if he wasn't already kind of lacking in character development, this whole twist just makes him feel even more of a plot device. And personally, my biggest plot complaint is probably if the number on the monolith was meant to be a warning to the people, why the fuck was she so vague? Why would she only put a number instead of telling the people what the fuck is actually going on? And this must be possible because later on in the game, Mael literally changes the sign to say, "We're coming for you, Papa." And as soon as she did that, I was kind of just sitting at my computer like, wait a second. So then why the fuck was the Paintress being such a vague, mysterious bitch? Instead of just putting "my husband is trying to kill you all, send help," or some shit like that. I don't know. My point being is if she had freedom to write whatever the fuck she wanted to write on the monolith, like it's a dry erase board, then why would you just put a number which could be translated to mean almost anything? So that to me felt like a huge plot contrivance, especially when the game itself even acknowledges that we're capable of changing the message. But really, that's all I personally have for little nitpicks and complaints, because like I said, I did enjoy the story overall, and it honestly did quite a good job of capturing my interest till the very end, like any good JRPG style game should do. But with all that being said, I also wouldn't have minded if this game just took a more traditional storytelling approach and basically just gave us the whole kill God ultimatum, like most old school JRPGs, because I feel like it really has has been a minute since we've just had a nice, simple, to the point style JRPG, because everything feels like it has to be so fucking deep or tell some sort of thought-provoking message. And while they definitely can be used for that, I don't think the iconic trope should be forgotten either, because sometimes it really is just nice to have a clear objective, spend the whole game working towards that objective, and then finally doing it, saving the world, and calling it a day. So with the story finally out of the way, let's move on to the last two things I want to talk about real quickly, and that's any woke/DEI shit I noticed while playing throughout my 80 hours, and the final score.
I'm sorry.
So while luckily 33 was mostly DEI free, there are 3 things that I want to talk about. 2 of them being less woke and more just personal complaints or things that I have issues with. And one of them I already talked about, being Loon's self-insert, because again, fuck self-inserts. But the main woke element was the opening of the game that I talked about with the dystopian extra dark France, where about 50% of the population was black. And to me, this whole thing felt like they were trying to reach the threshold for DEI funding to hit that diversity quota, considering that it feels like they put the least amount of effort into it possible. If you walk around and actually take a look at each one of these character models, it is the same one black dude, just copy and pasted. I think even the female black model is actually the dude, just with a different hairstyle and tits. It's like they kidnapped one random black dude off the streets, tied him up in the basement, and forced him to learn shadow clone jutsu to repopulate the city.
Evil ass motherfucker running at you. Then I see you start to speed up. Then I start speeding.
Even a quick Google search will tell you that even modern day France has a population that's about 20% black, and while it is fantasy, I mean, I don't really care. This certainly didn't ruin the game for me or anything like that, but it's still something worth mentioning, because games shouldn't have to be adding fake diversity just to hit a quota for funding anyways, and the fact that that even exists is quite frankly disgusting. I also read a comment stating that in a hot fix, they actually added gay couples into the opening segment along with the shoe swipers, and while I couldn't find anything about this on Google or verify for myself due to already being past that section in the game, if that is true, it is something worth mentioning, and I'll let you try to figure that one out for yourself. And the other way to look at this is a lot more sinister. If not for DEI funding, you could view it as just subtle propaganda for white erasure in European countries. Maybe that's reaching, but I'm at the point where I assume the worst for basically any of these companies, especially when funding companies such as BlackRock are getting involved. And the last thing I want to mention is, I guess, kind of less DEI, but it is something that I found important, and it's also something kind of hidden away in the in-game content, meaning that a lot of people aren't going to see it regardless. Now, off the top of my head, I can't remember if this was said at the end of the optional towers section, or after you defeat Clea, but at the end of one of those sections, the character actually says to you that Renar's wife is actually the superior painter, and that's the reason why he couldn't escape the monolith until after she was defeated. And from what I've gathered, Renard is actually based off of the real French painter Pierre Auguste Renard. If I mispronounce that name, sue me. And that right there is the main reason I have an issue with this. Let's say they made a video game, and in that video game there was a character based off of, oh, I don't know, Albert Einstein. And then at one point in that game, they state that, oh, Albert Einstein was smart, sure, but you haven't seen his wife, the real brains of the operation, the one who really came up with his formulas and theories. Wouldn't you be sitting there kind of like, what the fuck is that?
I mean, not the best example, because since Einstein is Jewish, obviously they wouldn't do that with him, but if it was a white guy, yeah, I could see them doing that.
Kind of discrediting the work of the real person, when the reality is that his wife probably had jack shit to do with anything. Because in real life, Pierre's wife wasn't a painter, but she was the subject of a lot of his paintings, meaning that she basically just sat there, looked pretty, and got painted. So I don't know, that's something that kind of just stood out to me and bothered me a little bit, because I don't feel like we should be basing characters off of real people, then trying to diminish their work by saying that their wife was the real mastermind. Like, get the fuck out of here with that shit.
I am so thankful for you, Arthur.
Shut up, cunt.
But luckily that's where things that I found to be DEI pretty much end. And while it certainly didn't ruin the game for me or anything like that, you could also say that it would have been better without it. And it doesn't matter what game it is, I will always call out DEI inserts and propaganda when I see it, whether I enjoyed the game or not. And with that, let's get into the final rating. So while I've probably made it clear in this review, I found Expedition 33 to be an overall really impressive game, and it definitely took me by surprise, considering that most modern games don't tend to breach any expectations I have, let alone exceed them in any capacity. But I actually wound up enjoying basically all 80 hours that I put into this game, down to its highly customizable build system, with its fast-paced combat that I found to be an almost perfect combination of real-time with turn-based, and a pretty deep story that honestly left me reflecting on my own family, and surprisingly made me actually feel something, which is certainly a rarity among modern games. But with all that glaze being said, I certainly wouldn't call it a masterpiece or a perfect game, and it's certainly not without flaws, like I've mentioned in this video, which is why for Expedition 33, it's going to be the first game that I actually give a 0.5 rating to, as I feel like it's better than some other JRPGs I've reviewed, but not quite to the pinnacle of being something like a 9 or 10 quite yet, which is why for Expedition's final score, I give it a well-earned 8.5. And would I recommend it? Yeah, 100%. If you're a fan of JRPGs and the things that I've mentioned in this video regarding the story didn't completely put you off. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's going to be your main deciding factor here. Most people do seem to enjoy the combat system, but the story's either going to click with you or it isn't, and it's as simple as that, even if it could have done quite a few things better. And I'm still listening to the soundtrack while in the process of editing this video. And the fact that this is not just the studio's first game, but it's also $20 cheaper than every other AAA game right now, certainly gave me more reason to buy it, and surprisingly it wound up exceeding plenty of these $70 games in many aspects. So it does give me hopes for this studio's future, and hopefully they won't pull a Vavra and spit on everyone's faces in their next game. So if you enjoyed the review, feel free to leave a like and a sub, as I plan to keep the reviews coming, and I enjoy making them, and consider signing up, become a channel member and a Poirlight, and a huge shout.
Alright, that was pretty good. Pretty good review. Honestly, didn't really have much to complain about. Did I finish Expedition 33? No, I haven't even touched it since I talked about it last time. No, I've been playing all this other shit. 3 is funded by 2 socialist branches of the French government, so yeah, there's the EI money and more. It's a good case to update the noticing to the new tactics. Yeah, I mean, the new tactics is exactly what I've been talking about since Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which is that they're just slipping in as much as they think they can get away with, because it's obvious that they've lost, you know, billions and billions of dollars on stuff like basically Dustborn. You know, Dustborn's the most extreme example, but yeah, that's just what I think of when I think of the extremely gay woke shit. They're not going to be making too many more Dustborns, you know. Honestly, Sony still committing to Marathon is honestly kind of unbelievable. Even if they end up delaying it, I just think we're already past the point where they're going to have the blatantly obvious woke shit, and it's just going to be the more subversive shit like it used to be, you know? And it's... people don't understand the subversive shit is what it's been, you know, for the past... Again, I don't want to get into numbers, but if we're talking about things like film, TV, movies, since like the 60s, you know, it's really... really where a lot of this shit started. So it's been around a long time. GameSense's friend made a good video about how China silently controls indie companies but lets them run independently to give the illusion they're small teams. Yeah, and slipping propaganda. Yeah. With Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 specifically, the propaganda was in the second half of the game, so most people never even saw it.